Fáilte a Chairde Gael. Welcome to episode 84 of the Rebel Matters podcast. This week's guest on the show is Virginia O Gara, who most people will know from being one of the founders and being heavily involved in My Goodness, which is a vegan food company that have a very well known stall in the English market in Cork and are also supplying food to various shops around Cork and Dublin and can be frequently found at festivals around Ireland whenever festivals are allowed to be happening. This is a chat that I was looking forward to having for ages, even before I got to know Virginia and Donald and the rest of the My Goodness crew, because I was aware of some of the great work that they were doing, and I've been getting their food in the English market and in the farmers market in Cork for ages as well. We ended up having a really open and really pleasant conversation in the back room of ACLAÍ, which is the personal training facility that I set up in 2013 in Cork City Centre, which was kind of cool because we had quite a lot of notes to compare in terms of how we're kind of running our respective businesses in Cork City Centre. And I think one thing that we have got in common is, despite them being quite different businesses, we're both running small local businesses that have something kind of substantial behind them, and it's not just about the bottom line and the profit, and there's a big focus on doing something positive for the communities that we're based in. Virginia chats about her involvement in Food Not Bombs, how she got involved in the sustainable food movement, how she came to Ireland, the setting up of My Goodness, and also the Cork Urban Soil Project, which is a really aspirational and revolutionary project. So it was great to hear a bit more about that there. And I have to say, this was one of my favourite episodes to record because, well, I suppose the same as a lot of the episodes that are kind of casual conversation format, they're really nice to be a part of. And this is definitely up there with one of my favourites. So I hope you really enjoy it as well. Before we get stuck into the chat, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who sent messages of support and solidarity after the last episode that went out 2 weeks ago. And also a big shout out to everyone who has been supporting the show on Patreon, especially the new people who have just recently become patrons. Myself and Vicky have been organising the sending out of the Rebel Matters stickers and the cracker new enamel badges that we just got made especially. We did have a bit of a backlog there of stuff that needed to get sent out, but I think that we have everything sent out now. But if by chance you've been expecting a badge or some stickers and haven't received them yet by the time this episode goes out, just give us a wee message on the Patreon page and we'll get on it straight away, just in case anything got lost in the post or anything out there. And for anybody who would like to start supporting the show, then you can find out how you can do that by going to patreon.com/Rebel Matters. But there's 3 tiers of support: Sailach, Dar and Funchog, named after 3 beautiful native Irish trees. And you can see the different benefits that you'll get by signing up to one of those tiers. And by doing so, you're helping to keep the Rebel Matters podcast on the road. And you're helping us to keep on planning the future episodes, and most importantly planning what kind of trouble that myself and Vicky are going to get ourselves into. So if you want to contribute to the Troublemaking Fund, go to patreon.com/Rebel Matters. I think that's it. Let's get stuck into this lovely wee chat with Virginia O Gara and episode 84 of the Rebel Matters podcast. Buen soltas. did My Goodness come about?
Oh, my goodness. My goodness was an accident, really. I never wanted to work in the food industry because I saw back in America how people were just worked to the bone in that industry. And food was always something different to me. Food, and my relationship with food was always more of a matter of social justice. I started working with food with this group called Food Not Bombs in Dallas, Texas, back when I was 14 years old in the mid-90s. And the Food Not Bombs just celebrated their 40th anniversary as a grassroots organization. And what we would do is food that was considered unsalable, food that was maybe not beautiful or had a bruise or wasn't big enough or was too big, would be thrown away into the dumpsters, and it was perfectly usable food. So Food Not Bombs would use that food and try to draw attention to the amount of waste that was created from the agricultural industry in America, but also at the same time draw attention to the amount of money that was spent on war while completely ignoring those who are most in need in our country. So it's called Food Not Bombs. It was started back in San Fran a while ago by this guy Keith McHenry and a whole other crew of people. And it's a grassroots horizontal organization that allows you to follow a certain pattern, being vegan, working to feed the people around you, be they activists, be they people in need, and work together to create food to nourish your community. So the Dallas chapter started in the mid-90s, and it was great fun. So, it was a nice way to meet people, it was a nice way to serve your community, and it was a great way to skill up on making food. So right around 1995, the UN was celebrating their 50th anniversary of being this organization, this human rights organization, and they decided to have their celebration in the UN Plaza in San Francisco. So in preparation for that, with all of the international media coming, Mayor Frank Jordan decided to clear the streets of all the people who were there. So Food Not Bombs would serve food there to these people, 200 people twice a day, 7 days a week. These people in need would gather at UN Plaza and eat. But that looked really bad for international media, so they tried to create new laws to get these people out of there. They were arresting people for serving food and charging them with felony conspiracy for serving food. So we thought that was shit. And the Dallas chapter decided to organize and team up with a couple of bands who are going on tour out to San Francisco and help serve food to people and help resist these ridiculous laws that were criminalizing poverty. So I had just turned 17 and I had just graduated from high school, and I hooked up with a couple of punk rock bands and about 10 people from the Dallas chapter of Food Not Bombs, and we all headed out via the Southwest to San Francisco on tour. And by the time we got there, I think we racked up our first felonies day 2, maybe. We arrived into San Francisco Pride, and that was great fun. We met up with Homes Not Jails and other Food Not Bombs chapters there, and I'd say there was upwards of 5,000 people gathered from other Food Not Bombs chapters around America to help serve food. So the San Francisco Police Department didn't know what to expect.
So there's 5,000 people from Food Not Bombs all congregated on San Francisco to coincide with this UN event?
Yeah, to keep serving. And it was incredible. So that's what food was. So fair play to them for being able to organize such an incredible event. So food was gathered from various food co-ops, from dumpsters, donated from other sources, and we'd make food twice a day in various houses to feed not only the people who are already there, 200 plus twice a day, in need in UN Plaza, but also all of the volunteers that are coming around. So what's fun about Food Not Bombs is that you never know what you're going to be making. You could have, a couple of crates of cantaloupes and like a couple of crates of aubergines, and you got to figure out how to feed 200 people. But it forces you to work with what you have. And so we did, and we pulled it off. And lots of people were arrested, and it was an incredible time. So that's how my relationship with food started. It was always as a tool for social justice. And I still work with Food Not Bombs. Even when I first came to Ireland in 2006, there were a couple of chapters. There's one up in Dublin. That's how I met some of the punks in Dublin. I was picked up because of our Food Not Bombs connections. Willie, Natalia, and Kieran, is that who manages Lincoln? Kian.
Yeah.
Was the first person who picked us up in 2004.
Kian Lawless.
Yeah, and had made a big old Food Not Bombs pot.
No way. It's
of
funny.
Food back in their warehouse.
Actually, mention Kian because Kian actually really helped us to get connected with the company that gave us the equipment. Like we bought it from them, but they gave us a really heavy discount for the gym in Palestine.
Wow.
And it was because Lincoln were playing here on St. Patrick's Day a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we all went out together afterwards, and I invited them to come and see the gym the next day. And it turns out Kane worked for this company, Strength Shop, and he was like, you should get connected with Strength Shop. They'll be well into this Palestine project. So I went over to Berlin and met them, and then they hooked us up.
Amazing.
Big time, yeah.
That's great.
I know. So is there Food Not Bombs? Is it still going in Ireland?
I don't know of any chapters happening in Ireland right now, but I'm sure one can start whenever the need is there.
Yeah. So then how did you go from that to ending up in Ireland?
So that was when I was 17 years old. I guess back then I was really into punk rock, and the reason and anarchism, and I really liked finding simple solutions to create more sustainable communities. And in San Francisco, there was a lot of that going on. There was this Born of Fire gathering happening where we started traveling around after the Food Not Bombs gathering and going to various places around North America to meet up with other groups in resistance. And basically this group of people would travel to another place that had an activity or had a particular protest that they needed extra hands for. So we did that for a while. I wound up in New York and got involved with various permaculture groups, and just continued touring around with like punks and anarchists on freight trains and the like, until I noticed that the punk rock revolution in America was kind of falling short of what I wanted it to be. I was hoping that it was actually a revolutionary philosophy of changing community in a radical way. And it was kind of falling short. So this was around the mid-90s, 1995, 1996, when the Zapatista revolution kicked off in Chiapas. So I realized that's where I probably needed to be, like as a gun-toting Texan. Like I thought as like a young kid, I could definitely serve purpose there. And like, punk rock wasn't doing it anymore. So I wanted to head down there. And I always wanted to go to Mexico anyway. So I didn't speak Spanish or anything. So I wound up riding trains down to the border of Mexico, and then realizing I was totally out of my depth. So I got on a bus and started learning Spanish along the way. And it turns out there was a really great school in Guatemala that teaches Spanish in a way that's complete submersion. So I wound up going to Guatemala and learning Spanish from these guerrillas. So it was folks who were leaving the Civil War. This is just as the Civil War was ending. They got jobs teaching Spanish and Cacachiquel to people who were English speakers.
With these people who had been fighting in the Civil War?
Had been fighting in the Civil War, yeah. The Civil War was just ending after, 36 years of Civil War. So this is, 1996 or so. I was about 19. And I got to, so the first couple of weeks that I was there, I learned Spanish with this really amazing fella. And he forced me to really analyze what it is that, why did I believe in revolution? What is it that I wanted from community? And I knew that I wanted to learn. I'm a city kid, I grew up in Dallas. And I love food and I love working with food, but I didn't know anything about growing it. I wanted to totally understand the process of growing food. I wanted to develop a trade. So he wound up, by chance, hooking me up with this tiny little town called San Lucas Tolima. And it's on Lake Atitlan. And he said to me, he was like, they have this kind of farming. It's organic, but it's different than organic. And I was like, do you mean permaculture? He was like, yes, this is it. Permacultura, that's it. So I wound up, by chance, in this town, in this volcano crater lake town that had a permaculture project called Proyecto Ijats. And Ijats is the Cacachiquel word for seed. And this is around the time that Monsanto and other seed companies were developing the Terminator seed technology, where they were starting to modify seed and patent different seeds as their own. So corn was becoming modified and the property of a corporation. Luckily, there's this guy, Ronnie Lek, who realized that was a really bad move, especially for Mayans and other Native Americans. So he started a seed-saving project with a permaculture farm called Proyecto Ijats. And I was lucky enough to be able to work there. So I worked in a garbage dump and as a beekeeper and alongside Proyecto Hijas for a couple of years.
In this village?
In this village, in San Lucas Toliman, which is where I first met my first real Irish activist, Cueva Butterly, when we were both tiny little babies.
Oh, and you know the way you ended up doing that when you went to Mexico? Like, is that what you had intended to end up doing? Like, were you going down there to learn about food, or what was your intention?
No, not at all. I was going down to fight. I thought that I was a little revolutionary woman, and then I realized quickly that I was going to be more of a hindrance than a help to anyone, because I'm just a skinny little white girl. So I didn't even speak Spanish yet. So I wound up in this town, not intending to stay there. I was lucky enough to be able to work on a lot of water projects in Chiapas in the meantime. But no, that was not my intention. I was just leaving this. I was kind of disappointed in the anarcho-punk community that was developing in America, and I wanted to find out what real revolution was about and real community was about and real sustainability. So just by chance, I had been interested in permaculture, and then I wound up in this town where there was an incredible permaculture project. The garden was being built at the lowest point in the town where the tanks used to park, and all the ground was really compacted. But Ronilek, the whole purpose of permaculture is, it's a design philosophy where you work with the patterns of nature instead of against it. So the motto is the problem is the solution. So there at the lowest point in this town where all the tanks used to park and compacted the soil, in a place where it rains 6 months out of the year, Ronilek took that and turned it into this tropical food-producing wonderland. And it was his goal not only to save seed, apart from Monsanto, and to create this sustainable closed-loop system of a gardening design, but also to reach out to other Mayan farmers around there and show them that not using chemicals and not buying into what corporations are toting as the way of future agriculture, that's not the way. There's another way. So he was trying to encourage farmers to go back to the old organic ways and to teach new design philosophy within their gardens.
Is the closed loop, does that mean that whatever you use just goes back into the system again?
Yeah, that's basically it. So the inputs of one system will always have an output. And if you can design something perfectly, that output will then be the input for the next system, like a forest. Like there's no waste in a forest. Everything has its purpose. Everything has its cycle. Everything has its use.
So was that kind of like a successful program for that village then?
Absolutely, yeah. They're still going strong. I mean, this was back in 1995 when they started. I was there in 96 till 98, and it was incredible. I mean, some of these guys, a lot of the farmers there, it's incredibly economically impoverished, and mortality rate of children is huge. Life and death is in your face all the time. And Roni was able to create a project where you could actually start looking forward to building more of a future, working with the land that you have. Because most of my friends were squatting land to grow their food and their coffee, their corn and their coffee. And they're squatting, they're growing corn on a mountain. So you have a vertical cornfield. It is insane. You could break your leg falling off your cornfield. But there's always a technique. There's always a way to work with that.
So how did you build the bridge between working with people in kind of what's an indigenous community essentially to kind of try and bring that to the table for people who live in more westernized or modernized societies then?
Well, really I just learned a lot from being there. Several generations would live with each other and live in harmony and live in peace. Of course, life was always screwed. It was hard. When you were pooping in a tube and wiping your butt with, leaves. And, if you're lucky if you even had water to wash with a lot of the time, and electricity wasn't always there, rarely. But man, my friends there just managed to get through it with a smile and laugh about it. And I think I learned a lot from just being able to observe that for a couple of years, and bringing that back to Western society, I guess just gave me a different perspective about what success is and what happiness is. I was really lucky that they took me under wing. I think they thought I was special needs because I was I had dreadlocks and a lot of patches and didn't really speak well. And, women shouldn't have been traveling alone. So we learned a lot from each other. But yeah, after a couple of years, my sister was getting married and I was turning 21. And my brother was in need. So I went back to Texas and fell right back into that kind of radical punk rock community. And the word was out that I had been gone for a couple of years and that now I speak Spanish, and I'd been working with various revolutionaries down south. And immediately, a couple of bands got in touch saying, hey, we want to tour in Mexico. Do you have some connections? Do you want to come with us? Will you be our interpreter? So it never really ended. After doing a couple of years in Guatemala and Chiapas, as soon as I got back to Texas, we wound up forming communities to finding a way to be able to share our privilege from the West, which is monetary resources, to people who needed it down south.
Did you ever encounter an attitude that, like, the stuff that you're learning about farming and food, when you bring that back to, say, Texas, that kind of like work or focus is kind of like below modern societies, like that they're like, oh fuck, we don't need to worry about that shit, like we just go to the shopping centre and buy our food?
Yeah, oh absolutely. I mean, especially in Texas, I mean, we're like cattle town. I think I always compare Texas to Cork. It's like the Cork of America. It's all cattle, it's all beef, it's all like, being a vegan is like worse than being a communist, kind of, it's all very, but it also very welcoming. And I grew up punk, so like you're used to people making fun of you all the time, and you're used to always being defiant, inherently defiant against what's around you. So learning what we did there, yeah, I mean, it could be applied in small situations, and I like that as a part of the DIY culture. Like I've always wanted to know how to do everything. And I'm never going to be a big landowner, and I'm never going to farm cattle, but I do want to be able to engage with growing food. And so what I learned in Guatemala was very much small scale, and it was a design that is appropriate for a sustainable community. So yeah, of course people are always going to tell you no, like that's not the way to do it. I mean, even when Roni Lek was down there showing permaculture to other Mayans, fellow Mayans, they were there telling him he was an idiot. I think it's just kind of human nature to challenge each other, and I think that's a good thing. To challenge with compassion, to force us all to learn, continue learning, and learn better ways to do whatever it is that we're into doing. Yeah. So
it must have been like fairly challenging kind of prospect to be able to try to bring back those ideas that you had, to try and integrate them into say we're in Dallas or.
Yeah. Well, luckily in Dallas, yes, it is a mega metropolis, but there are great techniques for urban sustainability too, which I think are arguably even more important in this day and age to start focusing on. But I wound up back in Austin, Texas. It's more of a college town, and I found out there was a permaculture, like drylands sustainability course. So I wound up joining up with that and becoming a permaculture designer through learning how to grow food in a desert. So it was very different than the subtropical Guatemalan aspect, but all of the philosophy and the patterns are the same. So it was nice to be able to apply some of what I learned there and that 2 years of skilling up there to desert Texas landscape.
With the commercial production of food and everything, like, are we totally fucked? Like, if we keep on going that way with where we're going at the minute?
Oh, man. I think it's going to be... Yeah, we can't continue as we're continuing now. Yeah, we're totally fucked. We're completely fucked. We are demanding resources from this planet that we just do not have. And the reason is because of capitalism. Like, we're encouraged to constantly expand and grow more for more people, and the system is totally fucked. We're growing food to be thrown away just to keep capitalism going, to keep the commerce flowing. So, yeah, I mean, that system can't last for much longer. And as far as the way that the agricultural industry will progress, I'm not that confident that it's going to be incredibly positive. But in small communities, it's nice to be able to know that you can grow food almost anywhere. And it's incredibly empowering for me and most other people I encounter to be able to have that experience, to see something go from seed to a plant, and then be able to consume that and then create compost and give back to the seed and be a part of that cycle, be engaged with that cycle. I think it's growing up in the city, growing up in Dallas, I was totally detached from it. And when it finally started to make sense to me, it opened up a lot of new realizations about life and how to live it.
It sounds like that's probably something that's very common for people who live in cities, is if there is like a food shortage or if someone's becoming exploited because of somewhere along the line of production to where we end up with the food on the table, it's the person who buys the food in the shopping centre is going to be probably the last person to feel it. So it's kind of hard to connect the dots.
Yeah.
That like if you are sitting there with a piece of food like an avocado or something like that tastes pretty nice and you can make breakfast with it, to try and join the dots to how that avocado came to be sitting on your table in the first place and who was taken advantage of somewhere along the line seems to be one of the biggest challenges to get people on board with changing the way that we like buy and consume food.
Exactly. So basically the way that the food, what I've noticed from now being in the food industry is that there are all of these techniques towards creating margins. That's what they encourage you to do. And basically that the way it distills is that you create a margin through exploitation. So you're either exploiting the earth by demanding more of it, by pumping it full of chemicals to make more tomatoes to be able to pick, and then you're exploiting the workers who are picking those tomatoes because if you can pay them next to nothing because they're vulnerable and can't speak out against it, then you can sell that tomato for a little bit cheaper than other tomatoes, and you're making a margin all along the way. Money's being saved, and it's not being given back to the earth. It's not being given back to those workers. It's not being given to that person who is like buying a tomato at a cheaper price because they have a job that they work all the time and a bunch of kids and that's all they can afford. It's a really screwed system. So there's always, the more exploitation that exists within the system, the bigger your margin. So that's another reason I never wanted to be in the food industry, because that's how you make money. You exploit.
And then the other side of that is like, it's actually something that my friend E said on a previous episode not so long ago, was that like you might think that you're buying like really cheap food, but it's not cheap. It's just you're not paying for it, but somebody else is paying for it so that you can have it for cheap.
Yeah.
And that seems like it kind of makes sense. But then the other side of it is the thing that you mentioned, that if the person who goes into the shopping centre is themselves being exploited and aren't getting paid fairly for the work that they do, and that's the food that they can afford to buy to feed themselves and their family, then it's not so much that you can start blaming the people who are going into the shopping centre to buy the food that they need.
No.
And I think that kind of raises another question for me, like when it comes to farmers markets and even like the English market. Like I've been in the English market with people who have grown up in Cork, and it was the first time for them to go into the English market because it's just completely separate from what they would have experienced or been exposed to or would have been able to afford when they were growing up.
Yeah. And
we're sitting there walking around the English market and it's their first time in it and they're an adult, and that's where the food is really like in Cork to a large extent. I mean, it's a place where you can buy fresh produce and stuff like that there, but then a lot of people haven't got haven't been exposed to it.
The habit or the means, because it's not necessarily the most affordable either. So that's it. We just that's it. Cheap food is shit food, and you really do get what you pay for. And that's why I feel so lucky to have grown up with Food Not Bombs, because we were able to get really delicious organic food that was going to be thrown away and work with that. And when you probably know yourself, when you taste a homegrown tomato as opposed to what you buy in Tesco, it's a completely different species. It doesn't taste the same at all. So also time is such a great resource that we don't really have a lot of right now. Like growing food is not that easy. It takes a lot of time and a little bit of know-how. So yeah, I think there's a lot that has to be redesigned in society to be able to live in a more healthy fashion.
It's funny you mention that thing about tomatoes, because just as we were coming to the end of the lease for the first premises for ACLAÍ, which was in Douglas, which was in about 2016 or something like that, two of us started volunteering on the farm in Ballymaloe on Wednesdays. We just drive down on Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
And I spent most of the time looking after the tomatoes.
Cool.
But the smell of the tomatoes and the taste of the tomatoes is like, it was as if like I'd never even experienced the tomato before.
I know.
Because they're so fresh and like looked after properly and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's mad.
And once you have that, that's what you want. And you're going to find any way that you could actually make that happen for you. You're going to find any place you can to grow a tomato. And I know loads of people who are growing them in their windowsills. Things want to live. Like that tomato wants to grow. It wants to survive. So it's up to you to figure it out.
So, with my goodness, I kind of get the sense just from knowing you guys a little bit that it's partly got to do with the food that you guys are sort of producing and selling and providing for the people who come to you guys, and partly got to do with the message that's behind the business. And it'd be interesting to kind of talk about that a little bit. Like, what is the kind of message behind My Goodness?
Well, good question. I guess I should figure that out. It's an ever evolving company for sure, but I guess what we say a lot is, if we can do it, anyone can do it, because none of us are experts. So it's nice to be able to be a part of a group of people and a business with the intention of never settling for the norm, and always being able to create something a bit better and more in symbiosis with our politics and with our ethics, and to serve our community. So I don't really know what the thought is behind it, but we work a lot. It goes back to like, okay, I'm not rich and my friends aren't rich. We believe that good food should be a right and not a privilege. And being able to try to create that equation for the last 6 years that we've been a business, we've been trying to find a way to balance honoring the farmers who are growing our food and paying them what that food is worth, honoring ourselves for making it and all of the time that we spent creating new things and paving new ways to process food in a healthy way, but also not charge people money that they don't have for that. So what I like about My Goodness is, we're far from being perfect, and who knows if and when we'll ever get to that point that we're happy with the way things are running completely. But it's nice to be able to continue. I think it's from growing up punk, and a lot of punks work there, and a lot of people who are into the DIY ethic and are into the DIY culture are willing to constantly work with what we have to create good food, and food that's never really existed before, and provide it at a good price. And a lot of that goes back to the permaculture principles, where we're trying to save energy. We're trying to cycle a food product through the system as many times as possible. So I moved here to study permaculture in 2006. And the problem is the solution. I mentioned before, that's your motto. That's your design philosophy. So as a Texan, I moved here and noticed it rains a whole lot. I'm coming from a place where there's like 40 years of drought. We're always trying to conserve water. Here, it was abundant, and that's a big reason why I moved here, because fresh water is arguably the most valuable resource that we have on this planet, and Ireland's full of it. And all my friends hate it, but I saw great value in that. So we based our business around working with nature rather than against it. So we collect rainwater, we filter it, then we ferment it and make it good for your gut. And then you can drink it. And we try to make it delicious too. So it's a holistic kind of larger spectrum of making things pretty, making things tasty, making things affordable, and not exploiting the land that it's coming from.
Have you guys ever had negative feedback or negative backlash for having a business that is like openly kind of like intersecting with politics?
Oh, well, I don't think people know what to make of us, quite honestly. It's I'm often shocked that I'm asked to come in and talk at things like Enterprise Week, because I'm an anarchist and an anti-capitalist, and their entire system is what is making the food industry into it's going to bring the demise of the food industry because it's not sustainable. So I think people are rather confused that we're able to do this. I mean, even when we first went to the English market, we told them we're a bunch of like raw vegans serving, like fermented rainwater and half rotten cabbage, and
it's
they
funny
laughed
that you're right in the butcher section as well.
Huh?
You're right in the butcher section.
I know.
Of the market as
well. those guys, when we showed up in the butcher section, they were like, wait a second. If you don't serve any meat in any of your food. And we were like, nah. I think they felt sorry for us. And that's definitely been something that's helped me through, like in Guatemala, when they thought I was like, I think, mentally unwell. I showed up there with dreadlocks. It's like when you showed up to the English market and there's all these butchers around you. They were curious and supportive. And now they're our customers. Now they get it. They understand that there's always more ways to do things than one. Yeah.
The thing about having a business that's, like, you're not afraid to pin your colours to the mast and be like, say that you're anti-capitalist and set your stall out or whatever like that. Like for us here, I think that we get a lot of support in ACLAÍ for not being afraid to speak out about things that we believe in, but we have got some kind of negative comments from time to time about people being like, why are you doing fundraisers for Palestine? Like, it's got nothing got to do with you. Why are you getting involved in stuff that you can just get along with your business? And a lot of the time, stuff that we're doing is not for profit. And I suppose that's kind of a way that we're trying to balance between, it's a business, so it's inherently a part of the capitalist system, whether we like it or not, and doing something that kind of gives, that takes away the barrier to entry to come into this place, and that gives something back to either the immediate community or further afield, and it helps to like look after the people who work here and stuff, that they have a meaningful thing to be engaged with. So how do you guys balance that? Is like having a business that by default kind of is a part of the capitalist system in a way, and sticking to what you believe in?
I think we should just quit and start a revolution, actually. But because we haven't been able to bring that on yet, unfortunately, we all are wage slaves, and you have to be. So whenever somebody asks to work at My Goodness, I usually say, like, sorry, you have to. It's not fair that, we're forced to earn a wage. But if you have to, you might as well do it in a way that you believe in, and in a way where you can learn constantly and be surrounded by people who support you and who help you reach your true potential. So, My Goodness, at least, even if we have to be a business working within the capitalist system, at least it's a safe space. No one's ever worried. It's kind of a joke that, we've never fired anyone, but also you're not allowed to quit. It's like a cult. So everyone who goes there, we don't have a strict philosophy, but, you have to be able to support each other, and no one is above each other. We try to create a horizontal atmosphere where we all feel safe and we all can express what we're doing and suggest new ideas to do things better, because we're all workers and we all kind of have our specialty within it. And there's a few of us all rounders who duck in and out. And I want people to be able to express new ways of doing things and to take that on and to try it out. So yeah, that's it. It's never going to be perfect until we have the revolution, maybe. And I know that everyone's going to need to eat, so I know that our place within it is solid. But
whenever we were over in Palestine, actually, one of my friends, Abdallah, who's a tour guide and who I did a podcast with, at the end of the tour that he gave us in Hebron, he gave us a little postcard each, and it was a picture of it was a painting that was taken from a picture, and the picture was of a falafel stand, and the guys in the falafel stand were wearing gas masks, and there was a full-scale attack happening on Hebron by the Israeli army, and so people went out to fight against them, and the falafel stand opened up, and there were like free falafels for anybody who's taking part in the riot.
Yes, that's it. People are going to have to eat, and it's good to know. I think that it's good to know that there's that support there too, to see people who are willing to put their life on the line, and then someone's willing to feed you while you do it and put your life on the line. Yeah. Everyone has their strength.
Do you ever think that you frighten people away with talking about revolution and killing fascists and stuff like that?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Well, I hope more that if people hear about that. I mean, it's important to talk about it right now, especially right now. Always, but especially right now, we're going through great changes, and I want people to talk about this. And if I do scare people away, or if people do, we have lost customers very recently because of our politics, and that's fine. I don't want them there. Fascists aren't allowed. First of all, they're not allowed in our business. We will not serve them. If people want to engage in debate, that's fine. I don't really necessarily think it's my job to educate people about sexism and racism and fascism, but I'm willing to do it because I can. And we've had to do that on our farmers market stalls. So yeah, I don't care. Like our business is food is inherently political, and our business is inherently political. And if we are given this platform, we have to use that responsibility wisely. And I want to be able to show people there's more than one way to run a business. And just because you have a business doesn't mean that you have to constantly compete with other businesses to be better. Like, I am an anarchist, and I do believe that it's through cooperation within your community that your species will truly thrive, not through competition. So yeah, I want to be open about who we are and what we stand for. We're vegans, we try to eliminate exploitation in as many different levels of our company as we can. We are, eco warriors. We try to create a sustainable product that doesn't necessarily, we can minimize pollution on the earth anyway. We're going for zero waste this year. So, and if people have issues with that, good, bring it up, but I'll tell you why we do what we do. We're very confident in doing what we do. And, politics, especially anarchists right now and anti-fascist fighters, are painted in a really bad light. We develop trust within Cork. We have a lot of trust within the community here in Cork, and we've developed that because we care about people and we want to nurture people and we want to listen to them and what it is that they're having issues with. And if they find that our food helps with certain digestive issues or anxiety problems, that's great, and that's a part of what we do. And they also know, we've always worn our politics on our sleeves. They know that, we are anti-capitalists, we are anarchists, we are anti-fascists, and we are caring and loving people. And I think it's through anarchism and that anti-fascist stance where that means you're going to be supporting people who are most in need, the most vulnerable in society. And that's what you do. That's the point of eating. That's the point of creating a business around food. It's to be able to nourish those people especially. We're kind of in a different world than what, the enterprise office would want us to be. And they're curious about our way forward because you'd have to be blind to not realize that the capitalist system is in a dire state and that everything they have been working to build up to support businesses, which is their job, is all about exporting. So the last time I had to give a talk in public right before lockdown was they asked me to help launch Enterprise Week at Nano-Nagel. And what I was trying to talk about there in front of Musgraves, who were there talking about how great plastic is, it was a talk on sustainability. Musgraves is there talking about how great plastic is and how sustainable it can be. The happy pair were there, talking about the great things that they do and also mostly about margins. It was a very industry-driven talk. But what I wanted to talk about was what sustainability truly is. And the way that they would teach us, if I'm not a business person, but the way that they would teach us how to design our business is to constantly expand. As a small country, we're Ireland, we're tiny, right? They believe we're tiny, and they believe that we can't support an industry with this nation. So they encourage you to constantly create a product that is sterile to ship out of Ireland. There's so little focus that goes on for Ireland and how to make this a better country and help this country reach its true potential. So I gave a little talk on how to design a business in a sustainable way, which is from the outside in. So you analyze, this is all permaculture, you analyze what your needs are as a business and as the people who make up that company. So what do we need to live a comfortable life as a group of people? There's about 15 of us, and my goodness, right? How much do we need to earn? What is rent? What do we want to eat? How much free time do we want? You take all of these various resources and characteristics into account, and then you design from the outside inward. So we have to sell X amount by this time to be able to reach this goal, and then you work inwards. So I know we can do that with Ireland. We're a bunch of misfits and punks, so it's taking us a really long time to figure out how to do this, still live our lives, still create a product that we believe in that's zero waste, and serve our community well. So we started first with Cork, and I think we're getting there. It's never going to be perfect, but we've saturated a lot of the markets around here and a lot of the shops, and we only work with shops who are willing to take our bottles, our champagne grade glass bottles, on deposit, because we see all of our products as a circular system too. It's not, society wants you to think in a very linear fashion, like you were saying before, like you buy something, then you're done. You create a product and you sell it. That's not how we see it. We see things in a more circular fashion. So we collect the rainwater, we create the product, we bottle it up, we tell people about it, they buy it, they enjoy it, they consume it, they bring the bottle back to that shop, then we go and pick it up, process it, and start it all over again. So it's from cradle to cradle. That's a closed loop. That's a circular system anyway. And during that time, we realized when we're trying to create this system, that's not how capitalism works. That's not how you make your margins. It's not a good business plan for making money, but at least you can sleep at night. And during this time, we realized we weren't we're still creating a lot of food that, we ferment what we can. We create new products like we can. We have a hibiscus now. We make a hibiscus water kefir, but we have to bring in these flowers from like Jamaica, right? And if that flower is going to grow in fucking Jamaica, be dried out, shipped over here, and then fermented once, that's doing a disservice to everyone who took part in growing that flower. So now we're trying to see what this detritus is. Like, how can we make something else from this? So we cycle as many things through the system as many times as possible. So we're taking that hibiscus flower and then we're smoking it in a smoker to create kind of like a brisket. So we've created a hibiscus, and that's what we're using to stuff into our tacos and to use in our Tex-Mex menu, which is like what I learned in Mexico and here. So, it's because we truly believe in what it is we're doing, we're able to continue to expand constantly using the punk rock, anarchist, anti-capitalist ethos and using permaculture principles. So most people who work in My Goodness have lots of different interests in life. And that's what makes it tolerable, I think. Even though we have to work, at least we're working around rad people who are constantly trying to get better at living.
I'm just thinking that if you were giving that talk in an Enterprise Ireland kind of setting, that there's going to be a fairly big section of the people who are sitting there thinking, she's actually making a really good point, and then having an inward conversation with themselves about like thinking about different ways of doing business. And then there's going to be probably less people sitting there absolutely shitting themselves just in case everyone else realizes that you're right. And that all the people that are working for them are going to start looking for a better way of doing things.
Well, we can only hope. I mean, it was very good timing that it happened right before lockdown, because I honestly think a lot of people were rolling their eyes like, oh yeah, what is this? It's like speaking a different language completely. And it's like, it's not Sustainable Business 101. It was kind of, I was taking them into loftier concepts that go against everything that they have been building towards for years. And so I would be naive to think that it would actually make a difference. I was kind of just doing that because we had just come out of this festival that was incredibly corporate as well. And I was feeling a little bit dead inside because that's not what we do. So I felt completely out of depth, but as a punk, that's fine. We're used to that, and we're used to people telling us we're wrong until they realize we're right. So a lot of that was talking about learning how to value and appreciate more than just the profit. So I was trying to drive home that Ireland is important. And if we learn better ways to grow food and stop just supporting the dairy and the beef industry, because those are the only farmers you ever hear from. And those are the only farmers that get any support, because those are the motherfucking farmers who are growing using the resources of Ireland and then shipping all of that beef and dairy out of here. We need more than that. My friends in Cork, the reason we started our second shop in the English market was to support local Cork farmers. Because there weren't a lot of places in the English market that actually had Cork grown produce. So we started a second shop that was going to deal with the glut. So times like this, people have tons of cucumbers, loads of sweet corn, and all sorts of things that the market's already saturated with it. And Lidl and Aldi and Tesco are selling it for pennies. So we work with farmers to be able to take whatever they need to give, whatever they need to get rid of, and support them in that without putting any extra stress on them. Because my friends who are vegetable farmers are under an incredible amount of stress with broken minds and broken bodies, and they get zero support. As a punk, you don't expect support. You grow up without it, and you almost have disdain for the support that you get from the government. It's the DIY culture. It's knowing that you have to be there for your community, and that's the only real resource that we really have in society.
That thing that you said, though, about maybe not expecting it going to make a big difference when you're giving a talk to people who are habitually kind of focused on the margins of business. At the same time, like, I think it's really important to bring those things up when the opportunity does arise, and also, like, because of the fact that you gave that talk and now you're talking about it now, it starts to join dots between people who might be listening to this who are in businesses who have got the opportunity to do things a little bit differently. I'm just thinking about the time that I did the episode with Dan Lambert, who with his sister Grace has the Bang Bang Cafe in Dublin, and he basically said the same thing about, like, it's not always about just expanding. Like, you figure out what it is you want to achieve and then you go for it, and once you've set out to do what you're doing, and it's like kind of a beautiful thing in itself, you don't necessarily need to go and make another one.
Yeah.
You sound like that they wouldn't want to have another Bang Bang, and we were just kind of comparing notes or whatever between Bang Bang and the kind of stuff that we do here at ACLAÍ, and I think like from talking to people who have got small businesses who are involved in small businesses, I mean, it doesn't really matter what the actual business is, but there's a lot of comparable things. Like the way that I kind of look at this place is that we try and make it so that it's kind of like a mutually beneficial cycle for everybody who takes part in the process, of like the people who come here and the people who work here, and where we get our equipment from. And even if the place does start to, say, become profitable, that we can somehow make that of benefit to people who just aren't directly involved in the business but who are in the surrounding community, or like further afield, or people who we might be able to help because of the expertise and the experience that we're after gathering. And in a way, it's kind of really similar in approach to a different way of doing business, but it's an approach that like really most people kind of figure out by virtue of like experimenting with it and doing it yourself, because it's not the way that you learn about business, or it's the opposite, actually. The opposite kind of way. And I'm like kind of like really happy that I never did like a business course or anything like that there. Because of the fact I don't think we would have...
You never would have started this.
...figured this out in the first place. The way that we're doing it now, we'd probably be doing it a completely different way. And like in the health industry in particular, like the vast majority of the marketing is based on making people feel like shit, and then selling them something that you're kind of creating a false demand for. Which is the opposite of what we're trying to do here. In a way, so...
you wouldn't be able to sleep at night unless you were doing what you believed in.
Also, like, shit would be shit.
It'd be terrible.
What about CUSP?
What about CUSP? Well, that CUSP was kind of birthed from the idea that we needed to do more, because we were growing food, you know, and we our friends are growing food, and we're processing what we can, and we serve what we can, but still we have compost going out. And that's CUSP is the Cork Urban Soil Project, and what we're trying to do is to rethink waste and see waste as a resource. And this goes back to the permaculture training that, you know, in a perfect system there is no pollution, there is no waste. That is the input of another system. And there is no work either. It all flows very, very carefully. So we really wanted to get a biodigester to be able to create soil from... We don't use plastic. We use biofilm in cups and takeaway equipment. It's not a perfect system. It's kind of a temporary solution to taking our business and society away from plastic. So we have, you know, we work at about 4 different farmers markets, and we have an abundance of forks and spoons and cups and straws. And there's a lot of embodied energy that it takes in making these things. And that could be food. That's energy that could be spent on growing nutrition for people. But instead it's being made into these cups and forks and spoons. And then at least it's not plastic, we'd say. And at the end of the day, this would be taken away and put into another plastic bag and dumped into a landfill. And we're not the only ones doing this. There are hundreds of other companies around Ireland alone doing this. And it just didn't make sense. We were just accepting that this is the way it had to be, but it didn't make sense to us. So we want to be able to, instead of just sending all of that nutrition, all of that energy to a landfill, be able to reclaim it and use it for Cork. So what we're doing is a group of us got together, my friend Molly Garvey and my friend Sean, Sean Binder, got together, and we decided we're going to work with the 50 other food producers in Mahon Point Market, go plastic free, and then organize our own bins so that all of this would-be waste is going into a min bin or a CUSP bin, where we're going to collect that at the end of the day with James McBarron, our good friend, and bring it back to the biodigester in the My Goodness Kitchen and cycle it through with enough nitrogen and carbon, and have a year-long experiment of working within the community to try to create soil from would-be waste.
What stage of the year are you at now?
We had a hiccup over COVID. We have been planning this for about a year and a half, 2 years now. And we won the Social Enterprise Academy of Ireland Award for Munster. And we were working with this community called Harp Renewables, with this company called Harp Renewables, and they were building us a biodigester that they were going to let us have for free to do some analysis on how quickly and what kind of soil we were able to produce. And so we've been working with them, and there were various problems with the machine, and they couldn't get it to us in time. And parts got held up in Italy, and then COVID and all this stuff. And then I just don't think it's economically viable for them anymore. So they have been not in touch with us. So instead, we called upon the Cork community, and CIT have a biodigester that they are not using, and has been sitting outside of the my friend Patricia, who teaches health and safety at CIT, and who developed all of the systems for us, and my goodness, for free, because she believes in the company. She's a woman who wants to clean everything with apple cider vinegar, but she has to teach all about chemicals. So she believes in what we're doing, and she gave us an amazing amount of tutelage for free, and now she's giving us a biodigester. So right now where we are in the project, we have the cusp office mapped out right next door to the My Goodness Kitchen. We got our 3-phase electricity put in. We bought all of our bins that things are being put into. We have 6 wheelie bins that were kind of donated at a really good price, that we can have a hatch down so everyone of all abilities can use it. We want everyone to be able to participate. And now we have to figure out how to get a flatbed truck with a crane over to CIT, and we have to take apart or not take apart this big-ass biodigester and ship it over to our kitchen. That's where we are. Matt and Point are ready and waiting for us. It's just up to us to figure out that last little bit.
Sweet.
So hopefully by mid-October, end of October, we'll be there.
Class. And I know that this could be a whole other podcast by itself, but could you maybe touch on the importance of soil and maybe link it to why you're doing this in the first place? Yeah,
I will. Well, I guess here in Ireland, we're doing all right. We have a lot of soil. I'm coming from Texas, right, where we had 40 years of drought and where agriculture's been a huge issue. So I used to work as a landscaper. I ran an all-women's landscaping company for about 7 years in Austin. And we were planting plants that didn't need soil and didn't really need water. So, and the reason is because our soil's all evaporated. The land has been overly farmed, and we've lost all of our precious soil. So,
so is that from
that's in Austin.
Monocrop kind of farming?
Well, it's from, cows, really. That's the monocrop that we have there. So monocrops, like you mentioned before, is when you only plant one kind of thing. When does that ever happen in nature? Never. Quilcha? Never. That doesn't happen in nature, quilcha. So what that does is that it makes too much demand on the soil. So not only, here you can, above ground, we see how much life and how much interconnectivity is going on. Well, that and more is going on below us. And when you try to pump that soil full of one type of chemical, nitrogen, that's going to grow grass for our cows, it's going to create all sorts of problems. Not only are you breaking apart all of the microbiome of our soil, which is what gives us our microbiome, but also you're creating a product from it that is deplete. So if our soil is deplete of what it needs, then it's growing food that's deplete, and then we eat that, then sure enough, of course, we're going to be deplete too, which is what's been going on for the past 70 years, really. That said, so we're in a pretty dire state right now with soil. We're losing a lot of it. The soil's going into the streams. It's poisoning our waters. We're fucked, really. That said, it's really easy. Microbes want to grow, and they want to grow quickly. So what we're trying to do is create soil, for an urban setting especially, that can create a microbe-rich environment to thrive and to be able to grow healthy vegetables that we can then eat and feel better from. It's just, it's just like literally the groundwork for doing all of the rest of the work we're all trying to do.
That sounds fairly straightforward, actually.
It's really straightforward.
Like that.
Yeah. So basically, to create good compost, you need a good balance of carbon and nitrogen. So your carbon is like your crunchy brown stuff, your cardboard, your other bits. Your nitrogen is anything that's kind of like wet and green, your vegetable scrapings, sludge, that kind of stuff. When you put those two things together, they have this beautiful reaction where they break each other down and create this nice friable soil. So what we're trying to do with Cusp is we have a biodigester that's speeding up that process. It's inoculating it with more microbes to be able to, there's these tiny little guys who will eat apart all of the various surface areas of all of those various things, and their byproduct is probiotics, their byproduct is carbon dioxide, and compost.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Is this the first time this has been done in Cork, this kind of like project?
Oh yeah. No, this hasn't been done anywhere around Ireland. We've looked around other places to see if there are similar projects, just because we want tips on how to make it function well. And there's a place in Saint Denis, just outside of Paris, that kind of has a neat little like bicycle compost scheme going on. I lived in California for a while and worked with an anarchist collective that collected all of the compost from the University of California, and also did recycling. And then in Guatemala, we set up a little garbage dump where we were working with recycling things. There was no system within that, so we were collecting the village's compost and garbage, separating out to try to create some kind of a recycling scheme and creating soil.
Oh no, that's class. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's the best part is that none of us know what the fuck we're doing really. You know, none of us are experts. And so then it goes back to, you know, if we can do it, anyone can do it. And if we're doing it, why the fuck isn't everyone else doing it too? Because it's simple. And we want to be completely transparent that we're going to fuck up. Like, we're going to mess this up all over the shop all the time. And that's okay. And that's how you learn. And when you set out in a project knowing that it's okay to not be perfect, and it's okay to mess up constantly, and when you can do that well, when you can learn to be wrong really well, and that's kind of the secret of running a great business and being comfortable within your business.
That sounds like a really great place to maybe finish up on.
Sounds good.
But before we do, how can people get in touch with you guys or go and
Find us?
visit us and find us and stuff?
Well, right now we're in a few places. We are in the E-Yard in Dublin. That's over in Glasnevin, really close to Bang Bang, my favorite cafe there. We are in the English Market. We have a couple of shops there for refilling all your krauts and kefirs and getting local Cork vegetables. We're in the Mahon Point Market. That's where Cusp is going to debut. We're in the Douglas Market, and we're in the Colkay Market as well. And I guess we are mygoodnessfood.com online and at mygoodnessfood on Instagram, where usually we're just making fun of each other and doing ridiculous things. So yeah, that's where you can find us, because we're not at the festivals anymore. Oh, actually, soon. We're in a bunch of shops now, too. We're in Dublin. We're in Lilliput, and we're in the Dublin Food Co-op, and we're in Small Changes, and we're in Noms, and the Hop Sack. So we work with local independent shops who are willing to tolerate our ethos of always having a deposit on our containers.
Amazing. Here, yeah. Thanks a million for coming in and doing the podcast.
Thanks. It's nice to chat with you. Thank you.
You know these bottles? Oh, it's unreal.
Yeah, these bottles are good.
Do you know the time Donald got cut?
Yeah.
So not too long after that, I brought my mum a bottle of kefir or something like that, one of the big bottles, but I just left it in the house, and I was like, that bottle, just left it in the kitchen just so you know it's early, I can drink it, it's really nice. And then like I was in like March or something, and then I was like December, I was like, here, as I'm just checking, like, did you drink that bottle? She was like, no, it's still sitting there. She's like, I actually don't know how to open it. And I was like, fuck. I was like, do you know what to do? I was like, just go to the kitchen right now and bring it outside the back garden and smash it.
Totally. Well, luckily the one that broke Donald's neck was this like really thin bottle that was with a screw cap. So that's the one that exploded onto Donald's neck.
Yeah, it wasn't one of these ones.
It wasn't one of those. But these Kaka Punch, man, the reason I got these is because they're champagne grade glass and they're made in Europe. And it can hold up to 8 bars of pressure. But what that means is often if you just leave the shit out and it's continuing to metabolize and ferment, all that CO2 builds up and it will shoot everywhere. But luckily, hopefully, she wouldn't get shards all over her face.
It's just sitting outside our back garden now. And the next time I go home, I'm going to smash it or something. Do you think like is it good to open it or just stand really far away and throw it in it?
You get it. That's a good question, and I often pondered that too when we saw the other bottle. I put a towel over it, like a couple layers of a towel, and then you like burp it slowly. So you like let out a little bit of air and then close it.
Yeah.
And then just do it over the course of the day.
Yeah.
Until you're finally able to like keep the towel over it, open it up, and all the air will come up.
Yeah, be fucking super fermented.
Oh yeah. I mean, it might have even reached this point of like inertia where everything stops fermenting. It had no more food, and it just sits there and starts to die off.
Yep.
Who knows?
I'll see. Well, I'll let you know. I just had this like.
I mean, can you imagine?
Nightmare flashback daydream of my mum like getting flipping some like bomb exploding in her kitchen with a bottle of fucking kombucha or something like that.
Oh my god, that'd be